It is an acknowledgement of God as the Creator and the Sustainer of life. All that we have is entrusted to God. It belongs to God. 100% of what we own. Abraham set aside tithe. He took tithe to Melchizedek, the priest of God, to be used for the work of God. In returning tithe to God, Abraham acknowledged God's goodness. He acknowledged that God's blessing upon his life, and he acknowledged God as the owner of all. Abraham. Jacob, remember the story of Jacob? He deceived his father. He tricked his elder brother to get the birthright blessing. We know about that story. Then he had to flee for his life from his angry brother. Alone and penniless, God gave him a promise. God said that he would be with him and bless him in spite of his circumstance. In return, Jacob acknowledged God's ownership of all that he owned. And he acknowledged God's goodness. Jacob said to God in Genesis 28:22, "And of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you." The patriarchs as well knew, and that they knew that they should acknowledge God as the Creator and the Sustainer of life. By returning to God tithe, we're returning to Him a portion of what He gave, what He has given to us. You might ask, well, what is tithe? We know it's a tenth, but a tenth of what? Leviticus 27:30 says, "And all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. Everything I have is God's, so I won't forget it. He asks me to return a tithe to acknowledge Him as owner of all." And it's a tenth of all your increase. A tenth of all your financial increase. We're going to talk about the second principle, number 2. Tithing acknowledges our deep belief that God is both the Creator and Sustainer of life. God asks us in Malachi 3:8, "Will a man rob God?" Does that refer to money taking out of the offering plate? I mean, is that when we're robbing God, are we breaking into the church treasury and taking money from the church treasury? God asks, "Will a man rob God?" He continues, "Yet you have robbed me." The Israelites responded, they asked, "But you say, in what way have we robbed you?" And God replies, "In tithes and in offerings." God makes a distinction between tithes and offerings. Tithe, according to the Bible, is holy to the Lord. It's a tenth. God specified that amount. With tithe, we acknowledge His ownership of all we have. Tithe is a testament of obedience, not a demonstration of our love. That's interesting. It's a test of our obedience, not a demonstration of our love. Offerings, on the other hand, are free will. God does not specify what amount we should give in terms of offerings, but our offerings should be in proportion to His blessings to us and our love to Him. So offerings are an expression of our love to God. Tithes are a test of our obedience to God. There's a difference. Notice the promise of Malachi 3:10, "Bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing that there will not be room enough to receive it." That's a wonderful promise. But you may say, if I tithe, I can't afford the luxury items that I own. So I don't know about this tithing thing. You may also be saying, I can't afford to give tithe to God. I just don't have the money to do so. My brothers and sisters, you can't afford not to tithe. You can't afford not to. God promises us, when we return a holy tithe, He will open up the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing that we have not room enough to receive it. God Himself promises us, "Try me and test me." Isn't that wonderful? He's telling you to test Him. Let Him prove to you that He's going to keep His promises and open up the floodgates of heaven. What a promise. Notice Leviticus